Good afternoon and morning for all of you Vertical Edge followers. It is Wellness Wednesday. I'm so excited to be here today, you guys. I am really pumped for today's episode of Wellness Wednesday because we have a special guest expert. And as you guys know, we are going to be starting with a few updates on Vertical Edge, what's happening this week, and all those things. Then we'll invite our guest on and we'll just get right into it. I'm super excited. I took all of your polling information, I baked it in, and I think that this is one of those episodes where you're going to want to save it, you're going to want to listen to it again, and we're going to follow it up with a really cool private event, which we've never done before. So I'm super excited about that. It will be online and you'll hear more at the very end. So some updates on Vertical Wedge. Most of you who have an order and are going to be getting an email from me, it's a delay. There's nothing I can do about it. We have the round collection large units, the new versions. They came in, they're beautiful, but the shelves don't fit. So we have to send them all back tomorrow and we should be getting them back next Thursday, which means it's just a week delay. We've got the prototypes of the tables being polished, which means those are coming in either next week or the following week. So slight delays on a few things. Really excited. That new shelf we just posted that everybody's freaking out about, we're getting the prototype pushed to production ASAP so we can hopefully get the pricing and pre-orders for our spring launch, which is happening next month, probably mid to end of the month. We're going to continue to roll out sneak peeks of that. Super exciting. So let me introduce you to our guest. Her name is Yasmin, and she and I met on Curate Well Co. And if you guys know what that is the business group that I'm a part of. It's a group of fierce, predominantly women. There's a few men in there, but it's predominantly women. It's led by a lady called Pia. Her name is Pia, and she's my coach. I've been working with her one-on-one for the past year, and I have been following her for 3 years. Okay, so it's really exciting. I'm excited to have her on and for her to share a little bit more about her background. So super exciting. How's your guys' day going while we wait for her to join? Hello!
Hi!
How are you?
Good, how are you? I have my little pen and paper here.
Perfect. I was going to say I need to go snag my notebook, but I've got my notes here. Why don't you introduce yourself, a little bit about your background and what you're excited for?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Yasi. Yasemin, as she said, but I go by Yasi. I feel like it's easier for most people. I'm a storyteller and a copywriter, and I work with predominantly female-owned businesses to help get their stories out there and get their marketing all zhuzhed up.
Yes, I love it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is how to tell the story of your business. Some things that we talked about on the phone was how do you not sell yourself short as an artisan? How do you incorporate you into your branding and your story and your overall marketing? And then most importantly, how can you level up in this area as a handmade business? So let's get right into it.
Let's go.
What exactly do you do? Give me the details.
Okay, so I work really closely with people who are really, really amazing at what they do. They are so good at what they do. The artistry is crazy. The quality of the product and or service is crazy. I mean, when you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, I hope you are a billionaire. And then when we find out kind of what's going on behind the scenes, what we learn is that even though the service and the product is so beautifully made, is so beautifully done, the language that supports what it is isn't really communicating what it should be to the audience. So what ends up happening is the product gets undervalued, the artist gets undervalued, and people are pricing things at values they shouldn't be. We want to help artists especially raise their pricing so they can communicate to people what really goes into making this product and they can stand behind it too.
So when you talk about how the story of the product falls short, give me an example.
Okay, so for example, if it takes you, I'm just gonna arbitrarily put out a number. If it takes you 25 hours to create something, that is a high-end product. It is a handmade high-end product. I don't want to see anything about fast fashion on there, or I want to see all of everything that goes into the design, everything that you put into the design, why you came to do it, everything that comes into your thought for how you sourced the materials, you know, all of that is important. And as your consumer, we don't know. Like, we don't know because it's not our area of expertise to know. So the only things that we know are the things that you tell us.
Yeah. So what do you think is the most important? How do you like communicate the value of your product without maybe becoming like coming off like super salesy? Like, 'cause what I see is like, oh, I've got this launch coming up. Here's like what I've made there.
Okay, so my first question would be, why am I using this? What is it for? How can you tell me the story of how I, as your consumer, should be using it? You know, there's so many of these videos that are coming out on TikTok, especially about these people in their 30s who are like, did you know how to actually use this pot? And there's so many products that we use every day that we don't actually know how to use, that were intended to be something completely different, and just, we don't know that. So I need you to tell me. I need you to tell me what I need it for, how I can use it, how I can use it in my day. Tell me a story about it. It's like, could you give me an example of a product? Should we play that game?
You know what? I really kind of want to focus this on either like, let's take candle makers and then like somebody that does like art, right? Like a canvas
Perfect.
art. Because both of those are, one is actually has a use and the other one, maybe the use isn't so clear. So let's use both of those for the rest of the show.
Perfect. Okay, so one that has a use, obviously, we just talked about, like, how do you use it? Where can you use it? With a candle, especially, like, I have a candle on my desk that's really near and dear to me, and the smell automatically transports me. Like, when I'm writing for brands and if I'm feeling some type of way, I put on that candle because it completely changes my vibe. It completely changes my environment. It just completely changes my mood. So that's the type of story that I want you to be telling about your candle. It's more than the candle. It's what it brings to the person who's lighting it, whether it's visual, whether it's smell, whether, you know, really get into that, and don't be afraid to tell those stories, because that's what makes it different than just a candle sitting at Bed Bath & Beyond. That candle at Bed Bath & Beyond can't talk to me, but you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And then with an artist, I think
let's because I think that I want to dive into that just a little bit more, right?
Yeah, sure.
So when I think candle, right, so I'm super health freak. Like, I don't want anything that has synthetic scents. I don't want anything that's gonna, like a carcinogen. I don't want anything that's gonna be a bad burn, right? So for me, it's important to buy a handmade candle because I can trust the person behind the candle, because I know who made it. And I know they're not gonna lie. I know they're not gonna lie to me. Right? And they're not going to greenwash it either. So like, for me, it's like, what does that item do for your customer beyond just the obvious thing, like, oh, you're just going to burn a candle and it's going to smell good, right? But it's actually much more to me than just a candle. It's like, I want this because it's good for my health, and it's actually reminds me to promote and put my health first, right? But you have to know your customer and what it is that you're speaking of in order to get them to like think about their experience with said item, right?
Right. Totally. So is your customer someone who values the fact that it is not harmful? I mean, like, hopefully, right? You know, like, is your customer someone who's picking it because of it's aesthetic? Is your consumer picking your product because of the way of its ease? You know, it's about really diving in, and I really, you know, especially after let's all just be real for a second. Like, ever since the pandemic, like, I do not want people telling me about how I'm suffering. Like, I don't want someone to find my pain point and put some salt in it and rub it in. But what you can do, right? What you can do with storytelling, though, is you can explain the positive. You can lean in on the positive. So you can talk about how the products are clean and what that means for you and your family and your partner and your child. You know, those are all things to get through pain points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Okay, let's move into the art, right? Because the art is a little bit more abstract and not so clear, right? Like a candle, you can tell that story. You can have those for connections. I think it's on a maybe different level for somebody that does art and art prints and cards and stuff like that. So let's talk about that one.
Totally. So I love when artists talk about why. Like, why are you painting this? Why have you taken a photo of this? Like, what's the story behind it? Because as a viewer, I have my own opinion when I come into the scene and I see something. Obviously, I have an emotional visual response to it, but I don't know why. I don't know how it came to be there. And
Yeah.
there's an episode. I have to give it to you afterwards, but there's this show and the guy's looking at a painting and he's just guessing of all the things it means, and he's like, it can mean it's this and this and then the artist comes out and it's like, no, it's really this. And it's like, so it just gives us so much more depth. And I think also knowing how you made it, like what went into that, what like not just the thought process but the actual process. Like especially a lot of painters now, they're using materials that are super unique. I've seen someone painting with coffee. I've seen a lot of different things, and it's like really hone in on that differentiator and why it makes you different.
Yeah. I recently met with a portrait photographer who did this really fun, like creative shoot with artists who do these really cool canvases. And let me tell you, I think artists, gosh, they have such a story and they create so much for the world, and it's so underappreciated. It's obviously undervalued, and they have such a hard time pricing and selling their stuff. And so it was really cool to see how she took a creative, like, portrait session and involved their canvases. So what one of the artists did is she painted a portrait of herself and she like put it in front of her face and did like these fun, like abstract, quirky things that really, to me, when she showed me these pictures, I don't know these artists at all, like never heard of them. I really want to follow them because their pictures are beautiful, like their portraits, but their personality.
Let's pause. You want to follow them. Why?
Yes. Okay, I wanted to follow them because their personality, the person behind the art, was very evident that I could like support this person.
Oh, okay. That is like storytelling thesis 101. You're learning about the person behind the art. You have an emotional connection with the product and the person. That's like what we want. And do you see how there's no pain points, like no grossness, no need to take a shower and or heave and vomit? That's what we want.
And it almost was like when I saw these pictures, like it, like I love seeing people who are passionate about what they do because I'm passionate about what I do. And so I don't really care what you make. I don't really care how you make it. I don't really, like, I do care like what you stand for, of course, right? But like if you're passionate and I see that passion, I want to support that person, like hands down, like whatever you need, let me help you. And so for me, like when I saw that, I saw their passion, and it was like almost I saw like their values through the pictures. And that, I know that that's hard to find a portrait photographer that will help do that, but that's like, to me, that was worth so much money for them to have those pictures and then to have that on their feed and to use. And it's like I wanted to go to an art show. I wanted to meet them in person, and I wanted to connect. And that's so, I think that right there, like storytelling through pictures, through branding, through copywriting, right? Like I don't even know what the caption is going to be for that, but I hope that it matches the story that's being told in that photo. So let's move into like some of that photo. Someone just walked into my office. A little bit about like copywriting and what that.
Hello.
Hi, I'm actually on an interview.
Mailbox.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll talk to you later.
Make sure you put your name in there.
Okay. Mailbox.
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so really what we want from a storytelling perspective is we want the visuals and the words to, I mean, for lack of a better word, we want them to get married and have a wonderful life. Like we want them to be partners in telling the story. And in my opinion, like honestly, I love working with designers because I think when I work with a designer, that's when we produce the best work, when you have the visual and the verbal coming at you together. So how can you make someone feel something if they can't immediately get it from the photo, or maybe they're having a problem understanding it or having a problem leaning into it? that's, I think, when the words come in and really like carry them through the finish line of the story. You know, it really helps them support kind of what this means. An argument that I used to get, or that I still get really all the time, is my art can speak for itself. I don't know if you've heard that before, but I get that all the time. My art can speak for itself. And it's like, it can, but should it have to? Or can you make it easier for your client to experience your work and to get into that emotion with you? And I think that's what's really important.
Maybe, yeah, your art can speak for itself, but everyone's going to have a different interpretation of what's being said. So make it even clearer with your own copy in there.
With your own value-based storytelling copy. And that's what's going to, when you said, like, I felt like I had to go support them, I felt like I wanted to learn more, like, even if it's not financial support, it's emotional support. And all of those vibrations, like, we want that for you. We want you to be out there selling your products and getting really jazzed about what you're doing, because the more jazzed you are, the more jazzed we are.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Right?
Oh, okay. You said, so you mentioned like working with a designer. Tell me about what kind of designers do you work with? Like graphic designers?
Graphic designers, experiential designers. It really depends. But the way that I think about it is that I want to feel something. So if I want to feel something, am I just relying on my eyes? Am I just relying on my ears? Am I just relying on my nose? You know, like, what am I thinking about and how am I leaning in? And the reason I love working with designers is because they bring a completely different perspective to the visual power of copy and how it can really communicate what the picture is saying. They are able to match that from a visual, emotional point, while we take it home from a wording perspective.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's say I gave you one of these pictures of somebody, like portrait photographer who did job with these art prints, or a portrait photographer that even incorporated like the candle maker. Like, I could see these really cool like abstract things with somebody that sells something, you know, a little bit more practical, right? Not something a little bit more sentimental. So tell me about how you would start to form the storytelling behind one of these photos, or a post, or, you know, in an email.
Sure. So I would start with, why are you posting this? Like, why are you sharing this in this moment? And if your answer is because I have to create content, I don't like that answer. I'm just going to be right. That is a no for me. I want you to be sharing something because there's a visceral pull in you that's forcing you to come out and share about this. So that's my first question, is why? Like, answer it for yourself. Like, maybe it's just because it's beautiful and it's just like you were awestruck when you saw this scene and you had to take it. Oh, sorry, there's Beth. Why did you have to take it? Why did it come to you? Why did you as an artist see this? Because to be quite honest, my background is in pharmaceuticals, and I did not get it when I first came onto the scene. I was like, how is handmade paper so expensive? Like, I just didn't get it. I was from a different world. And the point is that your consumer is from a different world. Probably.
Oh, yeah. I like,
you know, they may be integrated, they may be on their journey, they may be coming towards that lifestyle, but right now they may not be there. So how can you communicate the experience of what it's like to have your products or your services in their life? Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes. So like, quick note, if our audience is listening and they don't understand why is where you should start and all those things, you should definitely check out the TED Talk by Simon Sinek, The Power of Why. He really breaks it down very easily, very simply. That video changed me and my husband's life. Like, when it first came out, we watched it in university, and it was like, yeah, everything changed from there. It changed my whole way of living. Like, it was great. And then also, I've just started learning about like ethical brands and like what it means to shop ethically for fashion, the fashion industry specifically. And what I realized is like the brands that I follow are the brands that educate me and help shed light on what it means to shop ethical, right? And why it supports my belief system, my core values, and you know, like how I want to live my life and support the earth and not ruin it in a way, right? So I think that a lot of it's a lot of educating. And even with our stands, like we have to educate our audience because they're from a different industry. Some people get it and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Other people, I have to like bang a hammer into their head for them to understand why visual merchandising is important. And it's not bad. It's not a bad thing, but you have to do it in a way that, you know, reaches their core values. So how do you tell the why without coming off in the wrong tone? How do you create tone through your copy and your posts?
Good question. Hard question, but good question. So I think the first vibe is like, what is the vibe you want to get off? Like, I am obsessed with like cheeky, funny copy. That's the type of stuff that makes me click. That's the type of stuff that makes like Dada Daily. That's the type of stuff that makes me scroll. Like, I love that stuff. So when I communicate, that's the experience I try to bring to my consumer because it's my truth. It's my vibe. It's my personality. And I'm proud on the process of accepting who I am and being proud of it. So I would say, right, what's your tone? Like, what do you want to give off? Is it something, are you softer? Are you louder? The more you stick with how you really talk, and take a look, you know, go through I was about to pull out my phone, realizing that it's right there. Go through your phone, look at your text messages, look at how you talk to your friends. You know, I'm not talking about like business emails or like, I'm talking about like the GIF you send at 2 a.m. Look at the copy that you put with that. Look at the tone of that. How are you talking? That's who you are. That's how you really find your tone. And so lean into it.
I love that.
You said something really important. You said something about how you have to show your customer how your product works depending on who they are. And like, let's go back to first grade, second grade, third grade, college, whatever. When you look at the people next to you, we all learn differently. I was the person like in the sand playing with the things to really understand what's happening. There are some people who just sat there and took pictures of the slides. And your audience is the same way. Not everybody absorbs information the same way. So how can you make that information more accessible and inclusive for the people you're trying to reach?
Yes, and for those wanting to dive deeper into that, last Wellness Wednesday, I talked about product testing, and the same goes with like social media posts. If you don't know how your audience wants to be like communicated with or built into your community, or you don't know what kind of content or media they like, you better start testing it. Just start posting and get outside your bubble. Do reels, do carousel posts, do stories, figure out which one gets the most engagement and lean more into that slowly. Like,
and I invite you to ask questions.
Yep.
Go like Sydney did a great job with the polling. You know, the first few times you do that, you might not get a lot of responses. It might be a little bit of cricket action, but it's okay. You know, you will test the way you poll, you will test the way you talk to your audience, and you'll go from there. And I think the most important thing about the word testing, like the thing that I always try to hammer home, is there's two parts of the test. Like most people, we talk about testing in terms of testing the lead, testing the client, testing the market. What I want you to think about when you're testing is test yourself. How do you feel? Like, how do you feel when you're posting the client, when you're posting your work? Are you excited? Is it a dread? Are you happy? Are you, what is your feeling? Because if you're not feeling great, I'm not going to feel great reading it. It's just the truth. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we had somebody comment, and I love this. They're like, I'm a redneck from, is that Kansas? KY, Connecticut? I don't know where that's
Kentucky?
from. Oh, okay, maybe it's that one. I am who I am. Every post, every reel. It's just me.
Yes.
That kind of
love. And it's like, lean into who you are, because the more truthful you are, the more your stories will make sense, the more your viewpoints will make sense. The other thing that we talked about, how do you get your core values in your storytelling? I want you to provide definitions. And here's why. We had this fascinating conversation this week, and I had it with the team, and it was like, so let's talk about ethically sourced, locally sourced, right? That could mean something very different to you than it does to Bloomingdale's, or than it does to the person down the street. It can be ethically sourced from your backyard. It can be locally sourced from the parking lot at Walmart. You know, definitions matter. So in your brand, do make an effort to talk about your values in a way that explains them. Does that make sense?
So
okay.
Another issue for that, because the lady, I'm gonna forget her name, I apologize. The woman that won our huge giveaway just recently, she does art, and she does like she sells big ones and small ones, and then art prints, and cards, and like just a bunch of she also takes her art and puts it into stickers for like your water bottle and stuff. And one of the reasons why her art is a little bit more expensive is because she buys and so everything from a shop in Seattle, like a guy that does like some of his own like handmade art or paper, and like I was telling her, I was like, well, does your audience know that? Like, do they know why your cards are a little more expensive? Do they know what it means to truly and fully support you? Because what that means is much more than, oh, I'm an artist and I sell these art prints. Like, no, I'm an artist. I support this other artist by buying their paper. This is why this is more expensive. This is why this means X, Y, or Z. So like, again, what you said, defining your values, it also means educating. You can't just like, part of defining is that educational aspect. It can be fun. It can be exciting. It doesn't have to be so perfect and correct. Like, don't get hung up on the fact that it's not the definition from Google. It's your definition. It's what for your company, in your space, in your environment, in your community. So being bold, I think that takes a lot of courage for a lot of people. So I wanted to, throw that in there.
Of course. And if it's scary to like put out a definition out there, because that can be, that's like, you're like all lights on me. You can start by telling a story. Tell a story about the guy who makes the handmade paper. Introduce him to us like that. I don't need the percentages of what is tree, what is, I don't need that. I just need to be introduced to it. I need to be welcomed into it. Another great example is like menus. When you go and read a menu and it says like, oh, we charge more for our food or our service or whatever because we're paying people a living wage. That makes you feel good reading that. You're like, absolutely, you're charging more. Here's all my money. I want everyone to be paid a living wage, which is something that is like, like, isn't that so obvious? But it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think as more people, and I think it's a younger person thing, I could totally be wrong, but at least in my friend group, I have one girl who just is all about sustainable fashion, and that's all she talks about. And we know that if we go to a store with her, we're gonna hear it and we're gonna learn. And I love it because she just doesn't let up. And it's been like a year now of her doing this with me, and like, I don't want to buy the junk anymore. Like, I don't want to support the junk, and I know what it means. And I know, like, because she's told me so many times. Like, she just told me once, I don't care. Like, I wouldn't have listened. And even if she told me 3 or 4 times, maybe even 5 times, I wouldn't have even really second guessed it. But because she kept saying it in different ways, and she sent me podcasts, and she provided resources, and she tagged me in things, it was like, I really started to see things differently. She even sent me a documentary, and I was like, oh, I don't want to watch this, but I ended up watching it. And it, like, to me, like, because she didn't let up, and it wasn't like, it didn't feel like salesy, she was pushing on it. She was just like, look, I'm passionate about this. Like, this is what it means to be my friend, right? This is what it means to support my business. This is how I'm going to educate you on this, this, and this. Like, this is why we push so much education in to our audience, because it's like, hey, this is what it means to be a part of our community. You're going to get more on how to do X, Y, or Z. And so I think, that the repetitiveness might be annoying. Like, I get it. Like, sharing why visual merchandising is important. I don't just say that over and over and over and over and over and over again. So people are like, oh my gosh, it's so annoying. But what I've noticed is I say it in different ways. I show it in different ways. I teach it in different ways. I think about the 5 different, or I think it's like 7 different ways of learning. I try and hit on all those different ways. Like, how can I say this differently? How can I show it differently? How can I experience this for my audience differently? How can I apply it to different niches? How do I do in my stories or my emails? Blah, blah, blah. You get the point, right? Like, you do this. But like, touching on the fact that repetition is good, but not the exact same thing copy and pasted over and over again.
So not only is repetition good, but I implore you to write copy that repels people, because you want people, like, marketing. I mean, in so many ways it's not consensual, but in a lot of ways it is. You have the power to unsubscribe. You have the power to unfollow. And if somebody, like, if your message doesn't resonate with somebody, I welcome that. I love that. It's okay. Let them leave and find their perfect fit for themselves. Like, that's okay, you know? So tell your stories, push the point. If it's what you're passionate about, if it's the why behind what you're doing, absolutely continue on your road. Like, I don't care if you're like, we're talking like sustainability. I don't care if we're talking Duck Dynasty vibes, like, wherever you are and wherever you're coming from, if that's your truth, that's what we want to hear. And the biggest thing is people can tell when it's fake. I just feel like it had to be said. So, and I'm not saying anybody here is fake, but people can tell when it's fake. So don't even go there. Lean into what is really important to you. And if you are talking about something that is controversial or is, you know, could have that effect, just be open about it. Just be honest. Like, we're all people too. Nobody knows that we don't all do PR. We don't all have we don't even have that right here. Like, we're just talking, you know, and we're humans. We make mistakes. We say things we shouldn't. But if you provide an environment that welcomes the open dialogue, the back and forth, the transparency, the questioning, the education, you will have a lot better of a time communicating with your people than educating them and being like, this is right, this is wrong.
Yeah. I think what also should be reiterated here, and I get inspired by this all the time. It's like, I love seeing creative people do, even if I don't like Duck Dynasty and I see you doing your thing, I want to support you. So there's a little bit, you know, like, when you come off authentic, people gravitate toward the authenticity, even if I'm not your ideal, like, your ideal customer. But also, like, hear me when I say that, Vertical Wedge community, there is a tribe out there for you. Like, people will gravitate towards your authenticity and your personality and who you are, and the rest don't matter, right? Like, you're here to be your truest self, and to into that online takes a lot of power and strength and vulnerability and courage. And so, like, do it as you see fit. You said something about, like, how you don't owe the world your story. And I thought that was powerful, because it's like, for me, I want to tell my story. Like, I know, and I learned from a very young age, and it doesn't happen for a lot of people, but the minute you open up and you tell your deepest parts of yourself, and it seems scary, and then you have, like, this vulnerability hangover, but the minute you do is the minute you connect with somebody else, and you might help them see what's possible for their own life and how they can overcome things. And it was just like, you don't owe the world your story, but you're going to tell them as you feel comfortable and confident. So tell me a little bit about that and maybe your experience there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I tell that to my clients all the time. You draw your boundary wherever you see fit. And the best thing about that is your boundary can change. Like, nobody's writing this in stone. If you're not comfortable talking about your story today, I am not here to push you. I don't want to be pushing you, because I think what the most important thing is people talk about sharing their story like it's like eating candy. Like, oh, you buy the candy and then you eat the candy. You find your story and then you share your story. It's not like that. It takes time. It takes time to get comfortable with that. It takes time to become comfortable with how you're telling it, who you're telling it to. Sometimes it's not even about the story, but it's, you know, a lot of people, their story isn't just about them. It's about multiple people. And how does that affect them? Again, you have the time to sit down with this and think about how you want to do. There is absolutely no rush. Your story is yours until you're ready for it to do what it wants to do in the world. And that means you can go ahead.
I was going to say, one, this reminded me of a conversation I just had with my brother-in-law. He had mentioned something he's in, like, the dating phase, and he's getting serious about his dating. And what he said was, he's like, well, you know, I don't think it's just good to put, like, everything out on the table on the first date. Like, it's a give a little, take a little, give a little, take a little game. It's not just like, here's all of the baggage. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, I'm a here's all your baggage type of person. Like,
It depends on your vibe.
I don't have to worry about that. But also, then I was listening to a Lewis House podcast that talked about, well, maybe you should put all your baggage out there because then you're not wasting any time. But I'm like, okay, both are valid. You got to figure out who you are. But also,
should do whatever feels best for you.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I think it's like your personality and what you feel comfortable with and who you are. But then there was also the other point totally left me, huh? Anyway.
No, but it's so important because like people talk about marketing like it's one size fits all. And especially when you're an artist, especially when you are putting so much of your life, your values, your stories, your energy, your soul into this, that story is personal. These products are personal. This experience is personal. So any person who looks at you and says, you should be sharing your story, you should be doing this. I like am so against that. You should, I mean, the word should is just like, but it's like, should be doing anything is listening to yourself. Because the person who puts their baggage on the table and shows up like that and says everything, that person is comfortable. That person is at peace. They're ready to have the conversation. If that person wasn't like that and you forced them into that situation, what would that do to them? What would it do to their audience? I mean, we don't even want to go there. I mean, it's horrifying.
Yeah. And the other point is like you said that there's people in your story. Let me be vulnerable for a minute. Like I come from a very traumatic background with my family, and my other family members were severely they took the grunt of the trauma and they're still recovering from that. And when I tell my story, like I always have to think in the back of my mind, like my husband wants me to write a book and he keeps pushing me to write a book. And I'm like, I don't think I'm comfortable. I wouldn't put it in my name, first of all. But second of all, like the people in my story have not healed from this yet. So I don't feel comfortable putting that out there for them. Even if it's my side of it, like they're still healing through it. And I don't know what's going to come of that for them. Like it could set that back. So like, I was like, I need to have this conversation with them directly and address some of this, even if it might be really scary and nerve wracking and all the things, right? Like you have to go through that before you have to be conscious of who else is in that story that you're telling.
And I think that just speaks to your character. Like you are a conscious person. You care about the people in this story. And there may come a time where you don't have those reservations. But in this moment, the fact that you do is what I care about. So I want you to have those conversations. I would want you to like write a sample. Like maybe what you're thinking is not even going to be as explicit as you want it, like as you're thinking it might be, or how it may be perceived. So there will come a time, in most cases I've seen, there will come a time where people are just like, this is my story and I'm coming out with it. But if you're not there yet, there's absolutely no reason to push yourself. And trauma, I mean, it comes in all different ways. We have historical trauma, we have current trauma, we have, people who are battling chronic illnesses, and they're very scared to bring this up in their marketing. Why? Yeah. Because this is what our society has done. This is the polar society that we've created, so it makes sense. I just want to say it makes sense.
Let me be super vulnerable here. I haven't ever said this online, so people give me some grace. I know you will. But one of the things that I really struggled with in 2020 was when like the BLM stuff came out. And I'm a woman of color. My grandpa is full African American. His family lineage had their fishing boats seized when they came to America and they were put into slavery. And the history there is so rich and meaningful, and it's got a lot of power. But like for me, I had to struggle because I was like, I didn't grow up having an identity of a woman of color. In my friend group, I was like, with my white friends, like my Caucasian friends, I was the black friend, and with my like people of color friend group, I was the white girl. And so like I never really thought about, okay, how do I identify? Like I haven't defined that for myself. And so I got called out quite a bit on social media during the BLM stuff because people were like, well, why aren't you saying anything? And, like, oh, you don't have a right to say anything. And I'm like, well, I'm thinking like, well, first of all, you don't know my background. and I'm not comfortable sharing it because I don't know what it means for me. And so like for the last 2 years, I've really been like wrestling with this with my grandpa, right? Because he knows, like, I thought, okay, he's the person to go and talk to about a lot of this stuff. And then I was talking to a lot of my other mentors, and I was like, well, how do I start changing the narrative? Like, how do I write that for myself? How do I talk about this? And how, like, I'm struggling with this. Like, what is, like, I need to wrestle with this. I need to figure it out, because this could, change how I'm marketing things. And like, then there's the flip side of it, right? So like, there's the whole depth and the history there. But like, I felt, well, I don't want to claim any of that because I don't feel like right. Like, I don't feel like I have the right to claim that or to take away from other people. And it's just like, there's all these like depth, hard, like tense questions. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna allow myself to wrestle with this until I'm ready to really start talking about it, right? So there's personal story of what I'm struggling with as far as copywriting and sharing my story and all of those things. So I think it's okay to wrestle and to not talk about something if you're not comfortable with it yet.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing here. And I think the biggest thing to take away from this is you don't have to show up like you know everything. It's okay for you to be in progress. The human experience is being in progress. You will not know all the answers. You will never know all the answers. So, and to me, like let's talk about tone. Let's go back to tone. There's a type of person who tells stories because they want to see an ROI. They want to see an impact. That's not your brand. You are a conscious person. You're a storyteller. You're inviting people to conversation. So if you wanted to start talking about it in a way that wasn't from a place of expertise, or this is how I've defined myself, or that's okay too. It's however feels best for you. And if you're still struggling with it, and if you're still figuring it out for ourselves, I mean, like, join the party. There's so many of us that we are just like in it, so, and that's okay.
Yep. I know. I was thinking about like, okay, what about all the rest of the mixed people, like, that really don't ever get talked about? Like, there's a lot of identity struggle there. I'm gonna join that party.
I have, I struggle with this too. I'm Iranian, and I call myself the white sheep of the family because my whole family is like tan, and I don't know what happened here. And full Persian speaking, like, Farsi was my first language. And, I've struggled with this stuff too, especially, I mean, not in the same way, but like when the bans came out with Trump and a lot of stuff like that, you don't know what to say. You feel the light on from both sides of the community. Like, you're like, do I know what to say? What if I say something wrong? What if I look like an idiot and I misrepresent all my people? Like,
Yeah.
Totally.
I was wondering that because of your name. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I think it's interesting too, okay, like, let's just take a little side note, but like the people that come here. So my husband's Ukrainian, and they moved here in 2000. And like, I feel kind of bad for him sometimes because he's like a white male, but he's not really. I mean,
but
he
not
came
really.
right. So like, he's like, yeah, honey, oh, like, he loves that I'm mixed, and he loves that I've got all this like rich culture, and he's like, go get it, like, you're, like, you own the company, you go get them, like, you, and I'm just like, yeah, cool. But anyway, okay, so we got a comment. I missed the start of this. It sounds like great stuff. It's being recorded. I'm biracial and want to hear the whole thing. We just started talking about this, Sandy, so don't worry. But yes, it will be saved on our profile. We're talking about storytelling and the power of storytelling and communicating and showing up your most authentic self, sharing parts of your story as you feel comfortable. But also, you said something interesting, Yazzie, about like inviting people to the conversation. Can we just dissect that for a minute? How, if we don't have an engaged audience on Instagram, how do we start moving things to try and get engaged conversation in comments or DMs?
So I think engaged conversation requires being engaged. So if you're asking your audience to do that,
you gotta repeat that.
Engaged engaged communication requires you to be engaged. Did I
Yep.
say it right? Okay. So what I mean by that is if you want your audience to come and talk to you and to have that conversation with you, first of all, you welcome it. You welcome that conversation. You welcome those awkward pauses. Like, you will both probably say things that are not great, and that's okay. Like, let's give each other the grace to explore that. And also, I want you to be going out there and finding people that you can comment on their posts. You start that dialogue outside from your own bubble. You know, you push the boundary and they'll come and push the boundary with you. What do we all want? Like, we all want real people who really like us. Like, at the end of the day, right?
And
Real
you want to
people. Sorry?
And you want to find people that you really like.
Yeah, like, we want to be friends with people who actually like us for who we actually are. And it's like, business is the same way. And if you're not comfortable having that conversation yet, like, I personally, like, I have a story and I have not published it yet because I'm not there. I'm not there. But when I work with my clients, I do tell them one-on-one because I want them to know that I understand where they're coming from. And I want them to know that they can share with me and it's a vault, you know? So you go with where you're comfortable at. That's my, that's the shit of it all.
Yeah. So, okay, let's also dive into this, like, fear of saying something wrong. I think I've learned a little bit through customer service. So my audience knows I am the customer service person, and sometimes I fall short on customer service, and I have to be okay with that, and I have to own that. And so in my customer service emails, like, I try really hard to balance, and this is the part about, like, inviting conversation in these customer service emails. Like, I try to just be really honest and open and vulnerable with my customer service. Like, first of all, I want to make them feel like they're being taken care of because I care about their experience with our company. Absolutely. I will fall short. 100%. I will fall short in some area, and that's okay. Like, right, I have to be okay with that. But what happens when I'm vulnerable and honest and I genuinely care about them, so it comes off in the email that I genuinely care about them, they respond with grace. Hands down. I get done with some customer service emails and I literally just want to cry because I'm so incredibly, deeply thankful that I serve the customers that we serve, that they are also business owners that understand mistakes happen and I am a human and not Amazon, right? And so I think there is power that is moving, that's just rich when you start. If you get past that fear of saying something wrong, even just call it out. Like, I'm worried that this is going to come off wrong, so please give me some grace here. Saying that prefaces what you're going to say and automatically wins you grace. Not that, like, it's a game, but, like, asking for it is appreciated from your audience because you don't want to come off like you're an expert and, like, you know it all. Like, I try never to come off that way because I'm not. I am a human.
Right, and it's okay to be human, and it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to say, like, hey, this isn't my biggest strength, you know, maybe, or hey, maybe we should jump on a call for this. It'll be way easier to discuss. You know, it's a part of identifying your zone of genius and your strengths is identifying where you are lacking. And it's okay to be lacking because you're not bionic. You can't be great at everything, you know? So how can we put our effort into strengthening those parts or outsourcing? You know, I'm a big fan of outsourcing. And yeah. I think what it comes down to is, like, let's go back to the intention, the emotion. If you're authentic, if you are true to who you are, that intention will come through.
Okay, I have a logistical question. We're gonna go back to the logistical side. If I wanted to hire you to do, like, a few, like, the rewrite my story on our website page, right? Like, on our landing page. And I was like, I worry, this is my biggest thing, like, I worry that my tone is going to be lost if I hire somebody else to do it. How do you deal with that?
I always say copywriters are like jeans, because there's a lot of us. but also because there's a lot of great things that can, like, we can all look really great in different ways, right? Like a nice black pair of jeans that's like super dark with a slit on the front, or maybe you're looking for like a rugged kind with some rips in it. The reason that I do things the way that I do things is I want my clients to tell their story. I want them to be a part of it. So what I do is I invite them to coaching, and we start there. We start with what is the why behind the message, because at the end of the day, copy can change wherever, whenever, depending on the season, depending on the year, depending on the audience, but the intention behind the message is consistent. So what is that for you? That's my first question. And if you can communicate that to your writer, if you can have that dialogue, then they should be able to translate it.
Yeah, I like that. The intention behind the message stays the same. It's like, I always have to think about this with vertical edge as we transition and move and scale and blah, 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 all the stupid business things I don't like to think about. But like, your core values don't change. And I mean, you might like morph them a little, they might change, they might get,
yeah.
right? But the essence is the same. The why is the same. And when I lean into the fact that like, hey, my why doesn't change, but my products will. My why doesn't change, but maybe my branding will. My why doesn't change, but you know, the whole company could look completely different. And there's freedom in that. I think like it's allowed me to like release, like to start living like this instead of like this. I can hold on to my values and my why, but I can let go of everything else, and it feels great because I'm type A and I'm a control freak. And I'm like, okay, I got this. This is my ground. This is my home base. Everything else, who cares?
I want to know that why. Like, I want to know why I'm reading this on your website. You know, a lot of people don't put their stories on their website. A lot of people's websites are very unclear, you know, so it's so much more than the website. It's the strategy that goes behind it, because you can always redo that copy. I mean, I could write you the same story in probably 7 to 10 different voices, and you would be like, oh my gosh, this is 7 or 10 different people. And I'd be like, unfortunately, this is all me, and it's just my crazy brain. But the intention is the same. And so what I like to do is I call it co-authorship and co-development. Once I find that intention with my clients, I ask them the questions that they need to get the story out of them, because I want their writing to be there. I may zhuzh it, I may move it, I may tweak it, I may, you know, play with it a little bit. But for me, it's actually, it's critical to have their words there, because I want them to be a part of the process. To me, honest, authentic marketing requires the person to be a part of it.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Okay, so I know we're running down to like the last few minutes here. I wanted to ask a very important question as to like what happens to a company that falls short with their story and incorporating their story into their brand.
I mean, so many things. Like, you could end up with the wrong client, you end up with the wrong product, you end up with the wrong offering. You are limiting yourself and your company for what it could be and what it could become. I mean, really, the way that I try to think about it is what you said yourself. When people tell their stories, you feel like you feel a pull towards them. You feel like, you know, that you can talk to them, that you can come to them. And that's all because of the story that they're telling. They're creating a space for you. And when you're ready to do that, you create a space for other people. You are, I just got goosebumps. You are continuing that ripple effect. You are continuing that idea of creating an intentional open dialogue. And you don't know where your words are going to take you. You don't know how many people are going to be affected by you. Yeah. In a positive way. I mean, it's really incredible, because every person that you teach them how to understand their story and how to accept their story, that is now a catalyst that's starting its own tree of life. You know, that's its own tree of life. And then it goes to the next person, and then it starts again. And you really can't tell where it'll take you or where it'll take your product. I mean, there's one thing to be said about like financial ROI, but there's also something to be said about what we're doing to make the world a better place.
Yeah, that totally takes me back to in middle school. It must have been 7th grade. Am I right? Like, had an impact on my whole life, but it also had an impact on our class, like of students. We the counselor identified women at risk and decided to put them in this year-long like cohort that met during a certain lunch hour. And I didn't realize at the time that somebody nominated me as a person of risk. I just thought it was because I was the class president that they're like, here, you can go in group too. I don't think it would have mattered either way, but I didn't notice that I was a child at risk. You don't really know. Like, you're just a kid, you know, your home life's normal, you know, blah, 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 whatever.
You're right, yeah.
And the group was called Woman of Wonder, and it was based off of a woman who, like, she started this organization to help people like herself. And essentially she was like this, growing up, she is this person who, at the tip of the iceberg, it looks like she had a perfect life, right? We all know that person who just looks like they have it all together, but then what they ended up doing was like breaking down everything under the surface. And we became really close to this group of women, and it was girls at the time, right? But like every time it was just so powerful and moving. And I wonder if the original woman that started this group, right, for middle school girls all across the country, knows that she literally had a direct impact in my life. Like, I took what she lived and I embodied it, essentially. And I think a lot of the other women in that group did, looking back and reflecting on it. It totally made me think of, like, you know, you don't know what happens when you create space for your story to be shared that's safe, that's comfortable, that's encouraging and empowering and uplifting. Like, you just create a space for other people who create a space for other. It's like so great. Like, I loved that you brought that up, and that what, like, to me, the opposite question is more important. The one that I asked you at the beginning is like, what if you fail to tell your story, what else are you failing to ripple? And in your own time, in your own comfortability, in your own space that can help mimic other people. And I think that that's like really beautiful. And so thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I mean, like that, like what you just said, that is my why. That is why I do what I do, because it takes that one conversation that bursts another conversation, and you don't know. She probably doesn't even know. She has no idea where her mission has taken her. But I bet you she receives letters. I bet you the way that you treat people is impacted by her. And I mean, that's a connection she'll never make because it's impossible. You know, there's so much intangible love and happiness and acceptance and authenticity that can come from this. And it's okay to tell your story wrong, whatever that means. It's okay to not be ready, but when you are ready, know that this opportunity is waiting for you and so many other people out there.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think the power behind storytelling and the power behind how you say things with your tone and when you say things and how you ask for your audience to engage, it's like it creates a platform that's bigger than your product. And that's like when we started our Instagram page, that was my biggest frustration. I was like, I don't want to just sell our stands. Like, this is dumb. Like, I'm basis of my company without the meaning or the story is really stupid. Let's be honest. It's a bunch of stands, but it's the meaning behind the stand that is so important. Every single stand I have is co-created with a handmade artisan, 100% of them. And there's a story there that I haven't told. And I'm like, why didn't I tell? I need to tell. Like, it's important.
She's coming. Don't worry.
It is coming. It is. Their case studies coming out. I'm so excited.
They're coming.
But, it's like, it's great. But hey, we have some really exciting news to share with our audience. This is the first partnered with another like industry leader to offer an extended like Wellness Wednesday, but one-on-one. We've got 5 spots available. It's a paid training, and it's going to be taking place at the last Friday of the month. I think it's the 28th. 29th, something like that. It's the last Friday of the month. We're going to be on the landing page for that this week with tickets, and it's going to be like $25 to $35 per person, somewhere around there. It's going to be a really small group of like 5, 6, or 7 women, and you're going to have the opportunity to sit down with Yazzie and you have dedicated time. You can also listen to all the rest of the group. It's gonna be like very collaborative, and you can come with we're asking you to come with specific questions. It's gonna be kind of a hot seat training with a little bit more, and we're gonna have an opportunity to talk about your story, talk about how to form your story, how to say it in different ways. There's gonna be chat boxes and dialogue. I'll be on there, like kind of supporting those comments and getting that there. It will be an opportunity for you to talk to Yazzie, you know, kind of like this one-on-one, like with your direct question. I think it's going to be really powerful. It's something I wish I would have done much earlier on in my business. And especially, y'all are handmade businesses. You are your business. Even if your face doesn't show up, which is a good differentiator, you need to understand how and why your story matters.
Absolutely. And Sydney's going to be our first hot seat, so that'll be fun for you to watch as well.
Yes, maybe we'll wrestle with that, you know, like mixed race thing that I've got happening.
We can talk about anything, because like,
yeah,
that's the whole point. The reason we chose to do a hot seat, and like, not to take it away, but the reason we chose to do a hot seat coaching is because we wanted to create a safe, small environment where people could come in and really talk about what they needed to talk about. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Sydney a Google form to really ask the questions that need to be asked. So you have time to think about what you want to bring, and you can show me what I should be looking at, so we can have that honest conversation, and it won't feel like I'm pushing you out onto the stage or anything like that. It's supposed to be just a very intimate, low key, no pressure situation.
Yeah. And I think that this gives way for, like, if this, you know, is like sold out, because it is very limited, that the rest of our audience wants, like, definitely give Yazzie a follow. Like, and here's another thing. You might be discouraged by her follower count, but just so y'all know, follower count does not equal value. What you've offered us here is, like, so invaluable. I feel very empowered to, like, continue this vulnerability with myself, and maybe get on, write some stories, write some things, kind of wrestle with and get it out there. And you know, I just want to take this time to thank you. Like, I know it's not always convenient to have, like, a phone call and then do a live, and then now we're doing a training too, but I know it's something that you wouldn't have said yes to if you didn't feel, you know, excited about.
100%.
Thank you. There's any last, you know, big overarching thing that you wanted to say to our audience? You know, let's wrap it up with that.
Yes. Takeaway. Storytelling can come across in many different forms. Just start somewhere. Just sit down. Start somewhere. Put up, maybe it's a glass of wine for you. Maybe it's a candle. Maybe it's a bag of popcorn. Start somewhere, and you can always transform the story. Right?
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much. We'll follow up with some really awesome resources and links in our stories. Thank you for all the people that did Polling Tuesday, because you really got your head right for this conversation. Like I said, we'll post all the follow-up stuff here in the next few days. Have a wonderful day. Happy Wellness Wednesday.